Okay. Let's say I don't want to do what you say. Then what? Okay. I like comic books anyway, so joke's on you. What am I reading? It's not how I pictured making a new video in 2024. Okay. Guess I got no choice. Yeah, I got the Sephiroth figure. You guys want to talk about that? You guys want to talk about how cool Sephiroth is? How excited I am to see him in freaking Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? Yeah, okay, I'm sorry, I'm stalling. Oh boy. Okay. So, my chair. I know I'm stalling. I'm stalling as hard as I can because I don't want to talk about this book. But unfortunately, I got to. This is a very weird comic. It's not even weird. It's kind of like what you expect from a comic book. Or I guess webtoon, webcomic, whatever you want to call it. So, fun story. Right? Fun story time. I decided to check out this book because I didn't know they made a physical copy of it. It was at some bookstore at some mall I went to, and I didn't think much about it, but I thought about it. I remember seeing the ads, and you definitely have too. I'll pull one up right now.
Here, drink this.
A what? Choco? Seriously, just someone who'd tuck me in bed and cuddle me.
You want to be Big Spoon or Little Spoon?
Little Spoon, please.
Damn, I'm such a moral sexual.
Alright, did you also wanna cry? Same here. So I thought about it, it can't be that bad, right? Maybe the ads just made it as bad as it looked, It happens. But I couldn't find this anywhere. I looked throughout the whole damn bookstore, and it got to the point to where I had to ask the workers, like one of the workers that was working there, if they still had it in stock. Because I thought, man, it must be this good of a book if I can't find it. And they couldn't find it anywhere either. They literally looked up and down the entire store until one of them had an idea that maybe something was going on, and there was, because basically somebody purposely hid this book. What happened was that the spot that the book was originally in, it was being covered by another comic book, a Five Nights at Freddy's one. So let that sink in for a minute. So after finding it, I wanted to read this book for two reasons. One, I do everything on this YouTube channel. I do cooking videos, remember that? I do dancing. I do comedy sketches. I do figure reviews. I did movie reviews. I even did a Let's Play on this channel. Basically, this channel is just a hot mess of everything. That's every YouTube genre, I think. It's only a matter of time before you start seeing Pill Merlin's drama series. It's gonna happen eventually. Now look, I love reading comic books, alright? I always want to do a comic book review or any comic book review, and comics are just my thing, alright? I love superhero comics. I love mangas, like good stuff. I like comics that have a weird premise to it, and just very dark comics too. It's dark comedy. So I figured I've read almost every genre of comics except for romance. So yeah, that's also why I'm reading this, because I wanted to try something different. And oh boy, it is something. Also, I want to put this out here real quick before I get into this. This is just a disclaimer and a hot take, but if you are in any way transphobic or homophobic, you suck. Alright? I don't believe that that is a good reason to live as a person. I think you're a hateful person who needs to take a long look in the mirror and just ask yourself why you're wasting your time with it. That's really all I got. I think being homophobic sucks. Sorry. Only the hottest takes on this channel, I know. So yeah, just want to get it out there because I'm going to be critiquing a lot of things about this book, especially with its portrayal of same-sex relationships and everything. So, when reviewing a comic, you have to talk about a lot of things. You have to talk about the story, sometimes the dialogue, sometimes the characters, sometimes the art itself. You know, you gotta talk a lot about this stuff. So, I figured that this is a very interesting comic, because everything, besides it being a real book, is also the artist himself, like I mentioned earlier. So I figured, got split into 3 categories this time. So that's how it's gonna work. I'm gonna talk about certain sections, there's 3 of them, and just talk about what I think about it, and just kind of go on from there. So we have, the 3 are, I can't talk right. The 3 are the art, the story, and the controversy. And then I'll wrap them all together to give my final thoughts on this book. So, let's start with section 1, which is the art style.
Reach the full power of Urkin persuasion. I'm gonna be sick.
Hey, it's alright. I know a lot of people complain about it because they said it looks like the generic, like, webtoons art, which they're not wrong, but what I will give props to, and this is kind of one of the biggest positives I have with the comic, is the color palette. I think the choice of color for not just the characters, but the clothing, the backgrounds, all that, it's pretty well done. I like it. It fits so well with the, like, story that they're telling. I mean, despite it kind of being awful, it's pretty good. But in terms of, like, character designs, when they can be, they're pretty good. Like, the bonus material from what I'm flipping through and seeing, it's pretty good. Like, you can tell a lot of effort went into it. Not so much for the actual comic, which is fine. Sometimes when you're making a comic, you have to put in less detail to help draw out the characters, or to help draw the characters. And obviously, the panel layout, it's pretty generic for standard comics. Like, there's nothing wrong with them. They don't have the grabbing page turner that most comics have, to where they leave one panel just as this giant picture and it kind of helps grab the scene. It's fine. You don't need that to have a good comic. It's not really required. But, you know, nothing really to, like, complain about, because this is a webcomic, and even one of my favorite webcomics, even one of my favorite webcomics that don't really have those page turners is BG Cats. Granted, it's an acquired taste, I would say, but, you know, I still enjoy it. And it still has the same kind of premise as Boyfriends does, to where it's just, like, random stuff that just happens to happen. You know, so take that with what you will. But to go on with some of my nitpicks, besides some of the character designs kind of like looking one thing I don't really like is, one, they don't call each other by their names. Apparently, for the longest time, I didn't know they had names, because all they went by was Prep, Goth, Nerd, and Jock. But apparently they have real names. But they never say each other's real names in the comic. They only, like, whenever they talk about each other, they always have, like, a little picture of their heads when they're talking. So, let's say if Goth is talking about Prep, it'll show his speech bubble having Prep's face in it. It kind of just, it's kind of annoying. Also, they use text in their speech when they're talking, but it's like, you're not talking on a phone, you're talking in person, so I don't know. Like, I feel like just using their real names would be much easier to write out. Like, you know, you got Preppy the Cheppy, Chris the Emo or Goth, Neil the Nerd, Barry my Cockiner, you know, something like that. Another thing to complain about is that their mouths, for some reason, they're white, like just pure white. And I don't know, it's kind of a hit or miss for me. Like, I don't hate it, but on the other hand, like, mouths are not white, they're just black, like pure just black. And I don't know, every time they open up their mouths, I think about that one god that Kratos killed in God of War 3 when he cut his head off to use those shining like dark areas in the game. What was his name? Like Hades or something? I forget. It was something like that, but that's all I think about whenever they open up their mouths and I just see pure white. I just think about that guy and his headless mouth opening up. Probably shouldn't say it like that. Overall, presentation is good. It's where the story I think falls flat, and oh boy, section 2, the story.
I'm a fucking homosexual. What? No, I'm not.
Story. There's no nice way to say this. This is where a lot of the problems with Boyfriend comes in. If you haven't guessed already, it's bad. There is no nice way to tell a story. It is just painfully hard to read sometimes. It gets to the point where it's like cringy because of how much like memes and like text emojis they use in their speech bubbles. So this isn't really an overarching narrative. It's kind of just they have a conflict in the first couple chapters and then everything is fine, which is okay. This isn't a comic that is trying to, what's the word I'm looking for? Trying to have an overarching narrative. It's just a slice of life thing, which is fine. Like I said earlier, you know, VG Cats has the same kind of deal, except this is more based on fiction. Well, this is non-fiction, and that's fine. You don't need an overarching narrative to make a comic book good. You just need to have good characters and, in some ways, good art design, which can help. But the problem is that their first arc that they introduce and is easily, you know, solved, spans over, you're not gonna believe this, spans over from chapters 1 through 7, which means I had to read 140 pages just to get to the resolution of their conflict. And to me, that seems a little unnecessary, and it is because half the time, the plot, the arc that they were telling throughout chapters 1 through, I think, did I say 7? I'm already stupid. You see how good of a book reviewer I am. Yeah. From chapters 1 through 7 is filled with either filler or just extremely weird sex jokes. So, let me try to explain the story to you. I need some water first. The plot, if you can call it that, pretty much begins like this. Prep and Goth are roommates / friends in college. They live in a dorm, much like with Nerd and Jock. And Prep is complaining to Goth one day when they're when they're walking through their dorm, or what? Not their dorm. Their ground, their college campus. There we go. Prep is complaining that he has a hard time meeting guys and shit like that, and you know, he doesn't understand why it's hard for him to find a boyfriend. So Goth tries to show him that's not that hard and that he over-exaggerates, and make sure. Yeah. So he ends up seeing Nerd falling on his face, like literally. So Goth goes, watch this, and he ends up flirting with Nerd, who happens to also be gay, and then they hit it off, and they got each other's numbers, and they start texting, and even Prep is just dumbfounded. He's like, that's just dumb luck. Fast forward through time, Prep ends up meeting Jock first, actually. I thought it was Nerd, but I guess I was wrong. They end up meeting, but he's awkward about it, and then shortly after, Nerd meets Jock, and then he kind of falls for him. And then for some reason they have a party, and Goth ends up flirting with Jock even though Prep likes Jock. It gets even weirder because they're friends, because Prep and Goth, I'm trying to do my best to describe the story the best way I can, so bear with me. Prep and Goth are roommates, like I said earlier, so Prep likes to ask Goth for certain favors, which is like, I wish I had a boyfriend that would just do all these things for me, and Goth ends up doing them. So it's indicated that Goth tried to get with Prep, but Prep is too stupid to see the signs. Oh my god, I guess that's the narrative. Anyway, time goes on and Nerd flirts with Prep, and Prep tells Goth to keep his boyfriend under control. So then when Goth one day is hanging out with Nerd, he starts to question it. He's like, oh, I guess we are dating. So he asks Nerd if they are dating, and Nerd says, well, I like you, but I also like your roommate and this guy I met, which he's referring to Jock. And this is where it gets creepy. Also, this is a question to people. Let's say you're dating somebody for like 3 to 4 weeks. How would you really feel if you asked them if you were a thing and they said, well, of course I like you, but I also like your roommate and this guy I met? Does that send off red flags? Like, I feel like whether you're straight or gay, I think that's fucking weird. But anyway, time goes on and Jock and Nerd are together. Not Jock and Nerd. Oh my god, I can't fucking say these names right. Prep and Jock get together at some point, and then afterwards Nerd and Goth have a plan to convince both of them to join their Pomeranian, I don't know what, put it right here, it's a thing where 4 people get together. And the way how they do it is extremely just gets creepy, because Nerd starts to do it like way too much. It's coming on way too strong to these dudes to ask them. And then afterwards, it just gets creepy, because I think there's a scene right here I'm looking at. Yeah, this one right here, where like Prep is complaining to Goth, his roommate, that why'd you interrupt me and Jock when we were in my room? And then Prep falls asleep on Goth's shoulder, and then Goth is kind of like, you know, what'd he say? It's not weird of you if you're okay with your partner being intimate with others, okay? In fact, my boyfriend and I are talking about it too. We've been thinking about adding more people to our arrangement, if you catch my drift. Well, yeah. So pretty much Nerd just teases Jock, and it kind of comes off as creepy. And it just goes on from there. So they basically just fuck with these guys until they say yes to their shitty Pomeranian, whatever the fuck the name is called, Pomeranian relationship. And that's kind of just where the overall arc ends. And I read a little bit more to make sure I didn't miss anything, and I didn't. I got up to chapter 9, which I don't know why I even bothered reading 2 more chapters of this. That's pretty much where the overarching narrative ends. There is no, like, anything else. There's none of that. Just none.
I'm little Rodney's son. Therefore, are you referring to Roddington, whose buttocks is fascinatingly enormous? Oi, why are you disrespecting me, bruv? My mistake, original gangster. No, this cannot be forgiven. Now empty the compartments of your pantaloons. For what purpose?
Ooh, okay. Now we get on to the controversy behind the illustrator and author, which his name is, forgive me if I'm butchering this, Rainbow. Oh, right here, that's the author right here. And Rain, I think is what we'll call him, or Bo. I think Rainbow is fine. He has a very weird track record on his online presence before making this. Obviously, before the controversy with this webcomic, he got in a lot of trouble, I think, if I remember. Like, I'll leave a link to the video that I saw the controversy from. But to kind of shorten it, I'll give you some of the cliff notes I saw from the video that I think are important. One, he made a webcomic beforehand, I think a couple years before Boyfriends, where it was a BTS 18 plus like gay webcomic, which is, you already know what 18 plus means. And apparently one of the members of BTS that were in it, he was 17 at the time when that comic was made, so it's like really weird. And I know the argument can be made that, oh, 17 is technically the age of consent, but it's kind of like, I don't know, man. I think that's a weird hill to die on. Also, it's like saying that, oh, well, the characters in Big Mouth are only cartoon characters, so it's okay if you show it, which is, like, do you really want to die on that hill? No, you don't. Another thing he did is that when he was 14 on his Twitter, he said the N-word, I think, if I remember correctly. I'll put it right here on the screen if I can find it. He said the N-word when he was 14, and one, he doesn't speak English. He's from Indonesia, I think, if I'm saying that country right, Indonesia. And obviously he was 14. And I think it was with that, if you don't know what it means, just don't say it. Like, I'm not surprised if he maybe didn't know the word and he probably just heard it from somebody he talked to. But if you don't know what it means, just don't say it. Another thing that the person pointed out in the video was that he was like a shipper. That's not really the biggest thing I think it's not really something I care about. But what was interesting is that he did, however, have nudes of someone who's underage. I think it was like he used it as for his like art, which is weird enough. Like I said, again, this dude was like, I think when he got the nudes from this underage person, I think he was a couple years younger than him, which is still, again, just not a good look. So a lot of things are just not a good look. Like, it's not enough for him to go to jail, but it's enough to kind of like just take a step back and be like, why would you do that? I think. And honestly, everything that I heard about him and the way how he writes characters in their comics is also shows. Also, another thing I just remembered, I think supposedly he called a person that was transgender a trap, and I heard that's like a debate among people who are transgender. I do not know that for sure, but obviously you probably shouldn't call somebody who's trans a trap or a femboy, because they're not technically a guy if they're transitioning into a woman, and vice versa. So yeah, it just seems like with a lot of this stuff, I mean, I don't know, man, because looking through this rabbit hole that I did, it just seems like he was a dumb kid that just didn't know any better. That's what it feels like. And yes, he should still be criticized for it in some way, but is it really enough to cancel the guy? In some aspects, yes. I think him having CP on his phone when he was young is still kind of like, yeah, you probably should investigate that. That's something to really critique on. But everything else, I feel like he was just a stupid kid, because when you're young, you don't really think far ahead about how other people are affected by it. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents on it. I'm trying not to get political here, because a lot of this shit is just him saying stupid shit on Twitter. And unfortunately, that's just what happens on Twitter, man. It's either somebody promoting their OnlyFans or somebody saying the worst things ever in human history on Twitter. That's how it is. So, the controversy, it seems like he has apologized a lot for them, and a lot of them have not been proven, because a lot of it was just hearsay. He said, she said, but, you know, that's not for me to judge. I'm just telling you what I found out and what I thought was interesting. Overall, what was the purpose of me reading this book? After everything I told you, what is the verdict? Is it as bad as people said it was? Not really. I mean, it's a bad comic, don't get me wrong. I think this is something that you shouldn't read, because it kind of does promote some stereotypes about homosexual men that I don't think is always true. Like, yeah, there's some out there that do it, but not everybody's like that, dude. And I've talked to people under the LGBTQ plus umbrella, and overall, I don't think it's the worst. It's bad, don't get me wrong. Like I said, it's pretty bad with everything I said, but I think it's just appealing to a certain demographic. That's all it was trying to do. Webtoons had a demographic that they're trying to hit, and it was preteens, and that's just what. There's a door slamming around here. That's it. They're just trying to hit a demographic. That's all they were trying to do. So yeah. Would I recommend reading it? No. I think if you want to read something or watch something about same-sex people, I don't know, just watch Fire Island. I thought that was pretty good. So yeah, with everything from the artist to the illustrations to the art, I think I have to rate this comic. If I had to rate Boyfriends the comic, or Webtoons comic, I guess I give it a 4 out of 10. Like I said, it's bad, but there are way worse things out here besides this. Like, trust me, there are just terrible comics out there that I've read. They're way worse than this one. So yeah. Overall, was it really worth me reading it and telling you about it? In some ways. I guess morbid curiosity is what drove me to want to talk about this comic, because I saw all the ads and all the, people talking about how terrible it was, and I just wanted to see it for myself after all these years. So yeah, there you go, Boyfriends, the webcomic. A pretty shitty comic book. Okay, I did what you want. Now will you please just get out of my house?